The United States Air Force has only a few A-3s left in operation, and they are stored in Van Nuys, California, at Hughes Aircraft, which is now better known as Raytheon. So if this piece didn't come from a 757, then where? And where are the engines from Flight 77? The second identifiable piece of debris was allegedly a piece of the fuselage. Skeptics have claimed that this is proof that Flight 77 hit the Pentagon, but this piece could have come from any American Airlines plane. And why is it not singed or scratched after a 530-mile-per-hour impact and a subsequent fireball? The third piece of debris was a diffuser case. Let's look a little closer at the diffuser case of a 757. Do you see the triangular bezels around the openings? Those are nowhere to be found on the case found at the Pentagon. The remainder of the debris was light enough to have been carried by hand, and employees at the Pentagon were seen carrying away a large box shrouded in a blue tarp. Why the mystery? If Flight 77 was vaporized on impact, it would be the first time in aviation history. For example, August 15, 2005, Helios Airways Flight 522, a Boeing 737 en route to Athens, Greece, crashed into a hillside at full speed. 121 passengers, all dead. Fire. Tail sections. Wing sections. Engines. Cockpit. Bodies. Catch my drift? Fifth, why is the damage to the Pentagon completely inconsistent with a Boeing 757? These photos were taken before the roof of the outer ring had collapsed. The only damage to the outer wall is a single hole, no more than 16 feet in diameter. A Boeing 757 is 155 feet long, 44 feet high, has a 124-foot wingspan, and weighs almost 100 tons. Are we supposed to believe that it disappeared into this hole without leaving any wreckage on the outside? Why is there no damage from where the wings, or the vertical stabilizer, or the engines would have slammed into the building? Remember how big the engines were? If 6 tons of steel and titanium slammed into the Pentagon at 530 miles per hour, they would bury themselves inside the building, leaving 2 very distinct imprints. And yet, the only damage on the outside of the Pentagon is this single hole, with no damage from where the engines would have hit. Why are the windows next to the hole completely intact? Why are the cable spools directly in front of the hole completely untouched? And as for the inside of the Pentagon, there's another hole, approximately 16 feet in diameter, found on the other side of the C-ring, 3 rings from the impact. For that hole to have been caused by Flight 77, the Boeing would have had to smash through 9 feet of steel-reinforced concrete. The nose of a commercial airliner is composed of lightweight carbon. This is what usually happens to the nose of a commercial airliner in a plane crash. If the nose caused this hole, where's the rest of the debris from the plane? So what could blow a 16-foot hole in the outer ring of the Pentagon, smash through 9 feet of steel-reinforced concrete, and leave another 16-foot hole? A cruise missile. This is what Slobodan Milosevic's residence in Belgrade looked like after a Tomahawk cruise missile had hit it. See any similarities? Sixth, the eyewitnesses. Some saw a huge 100-ton commercial airliner.
Standstill, and I looked off. I was, looked out my window. I saw this plane, a jet, American Airlines jet, coming.
Some saw a small 8 to 20 passenger commuter plane.
So what looked to be maybe a 20-passenger corporate jet, no markings on the side, coming in at a shallow.
And some saw a United States military helicopter.
When it occurred, he said that he saw a helicopter circle the building. He said that it appeared to be a U.S. military helicopter and that it disappeared behind the building where the helicopter landing zone is, and that he then saw a fireball go into the sky.
So who's telling the truth? Take this into consideration. April Gallup was working in the Pentagon's west side when it was hit. In Jim Mars's book, Inside Job, April claims. While in the hospital, men in suits visited her more than once. They never identified themselves or what agency they worked for. They didn't tell her what to say, just made suggestions. For example, to take the compensation money and shut up. They also kept insisting that a plane hit the building. They repeated this over and over. But I was there, and I never saw a plane, or even debris from a plane. I figured this story is to brainwash people. So if a Boeing 757 didn't hit the Pentagon, then what did? Eyewitnesses inside and outside the building were thrown to the ground by what they described as a shockwave. Even the Sheraton Hotel, 1.6 miles away, was rocked by the blast. A number of military personnel at the Pentagon specifically mentioned smelling cordite. Cordite and jet fuel have two very distinct smells. Cordite is a compound used in ammunition which is comprised of nitroguanidine, nitrocellulose, and nitroglycerin. It is cool burning, produces little smoke and no flash, but produces a strong detonation wave. And eyewitnesses described a bright, silvery flash. Jet fuel combustion, i.e., the planes that struck the Twin Towers, is bright yellow at best. Watch this. A massive smoldering fireball. No silvery flash, no shockwave. And at the Pentagon, a tiny, bright, silvery flash, which shakes nearby buildings. Whatever it was, it might have been related to the two planes that were in the air after the crash. The first one was uniformly identified as a C-130. The second plane was an unmarked white plane flying over Washington, D.C.
Aaron, I'm standing in Lafayette Park directly across from the White House, perhaps about 200 yards from the White House residence itself. About 10 minutes ago, there was a white jet circling overhead. Now, you generally don't see planes in the area over the White House. That is restricted airspace. No reason to believe that this jet was there for any nefarious purposes, but the Secret Service was very concerned, pointing up at the jet in the sky. It is out of sight now, best we can tell.
At 9:25, Jane Garvey, the head of the FAA, initiated a national ground stop, which prevents further takeoffs and requires all planes in the air to land. The order, which hasn't been implemented since 1903, applied to almost every single kind of plane, civilian, military, or law enforcement. Certain military flights were allowed to fly during this time, but the FAA isn't talking. Why were these two planes allowed in the air when everyone else had to land? And finally, why did people keep reporting a second explosion at the Pentagon?
Well, I can't tell you about that, but I was just here in front of the Capitol, which, by the way, has been evacuated, and back toward the Supreme Court area, we just heard a low, muffled thud. It sounded like a small explosion.
There have been unconfirmed reports of second explosions here at the Pentagon. We have not confirmed that, but again, the counterintelligence sources can...
Where did this fireball come from? 7th, surveillance cameras from a gas station, Sheraton Hotel, and the Virginia Department of Transportation captured the entire thing. However, the FBI was there within minutes to confiscate the tapes, including a warning for the employees not to discuss what they had seen. If the government wishes to prove once and for all that Flight 77 hit the Pentagon, all they would have to do is release one of those tapes. Instead, they released 5 frames from a camera across the heliport, even though none of them show a 757. And finally, why do satellite photos taken 4 days before 9/11 show a white marking on the front lawn, marking almost the exact trajectory of whatever hit the Pentagon 4 days later? And is it merely a coincidence that the Pentagon was